Hello, everyone. It's Professor Grady here. Today, we're going to talk about our next project in character development. We're going to be working on a box modeling project. This project has multiple benefits. Not only does it give you to apply feedback that you may get for your character, since we're not doing anything else with the character until after this um, enemy box modeling project, which is a 2-week project. Then we'll revisit our character for retypology and all that good stuff. But this will give you another modeling technique or character modeling technique at your disposal and teach you proper typology. One of the most important parts of character modeling is making sure that you're modeling for animation, meaning that your typology can easily deform. So we're going to talk about all that throughout this process. You have been provided concept art. This is the humanoid enemy box model. In this assignment, you will create a low poly humanoid enemy model based on provided concept art. So this is very similar to the minion. We're not going to UV it. We're not going to texture it. Only this is the box modeling method. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize this, and I'm going to start this process by getting my concept art into a Maya file. You'll need to keep your Maya file together. So all of your reference images in your scene folder should be in the same folder. A lot of times you'll see people use a project folder, and this is where it generates all the different projects for you, and people will keep their references in source images. You just hit accept, but then every time you open Maya, you have to set the project. But if you do see that, especially in animation studios, that's one of the ways people organize your files. But as long as you keep your scene file with your references in the same folder, everything should work out fine and you shouldn't lose the references. Now, I'm going to go over to my orthographic views, and I'm going to go to View, Image Plane, Import Image. And I'm going to import in my references. So I'm in the front view right now, so I'm going to bring in the front view. And immediately you can see in the perspective view, it puts him dead center, and that's not what I want. I'm going to go ahead and hit W on this image plane here so I can move him up. I want his feet comfortably resting on this dark line here that's the darkest in your grid, because that represents the stage floor. Now I'm going to go over to my side view and go to View, Image Plane, Import Image. And now the side view. And if you look at these, I'm going to make sure I move this up the same amount. Let me go back to Image Plane 1 here. Translate. We'll just make that an even 7.8. And so we'll go here and translate it 7.8 on that y-axis. Beautiful. And if you can see here, the side view and the front view line up pretty good. His chin may have a bit of a lower dip in the side view. But they're pretty much one-to-one, and that was done intentionally when I made my concept art. But I don't have to keep them in the middle of the stage like this, because that's going to really interfere with my ability to model them. So I can push these out pretty far. We'll make it just an even -65. And we'll push this one out on the z-axis, a -65. And if you look in my orthographic views, they maintain their scale even though I've pushed them far away. That's because my front view isn't considering the x-axis and my side view isn't considering the z-axis. This is going to make it, well, actually it does in the left and right sense, but the distance isn't going to create any issues. So, what we're going to do, we can use this to model on our stage while keeping our concept art out of the way. So, you would think I would start with a box, and you absolutely can. A lot of people will start with the hips. In fact, some people are really passionate. The only way to start with modeling is in the hips, and that's so your character feels grounded. But I actually don't start with the hips, and I know a lot of other people who don't either. I start with the head. And the reason that I start with the head, and the same reasoning by a lot of other character modelers, is because bodies are measured in art by heads tall. So when we're working on our head, that determines the proportions for the rest of the design. It's also where the most important edge flow is. Edge flow on the face and on joints is going to be key for animation. So I could come up here and, start sizing this box to the head. And it already has dimensions, so that already kind of gets me there. Like I could move it over here in the side view. But I have to think about all sides while I'm defining my topology. And I'm not ready to do that. Like learning typology on its own is hard enough. In fact, I highly encourage all you guys to pull up references for proper facial typology as you model just anytime. So I'm actually not going to even start with a box for our box modeling model. We'll turn it into a box eventually. I'm going to start with a plane. And I'm going to start with the simplest plane I can just about make. It's only going to have one subdivision. I'm going to make all the rest of my subdivisions manually. This is definitely a manual type project, not a let's click some buttons and hope it works type of project. I'm going to go ahead and scale this plane, wanting that one division to be on my center line in the front. Make sure it's the tilt of his face there. I'm going to actually kind of set it inside so it's kind of right at the chin. And you immediately notice, well, what's the point of putting my references in there? I can't see them now. We're going to go over and go to shading, turn on X-ray, shading, X-ray here. And this allows me to actually see through the mesh. This is while still indicating shadow. So once I start making this 3 dimensions, it will be slightly darker if it's further back in space and things like that. So it's a little bit better than working in wireframe, which is 4 on your keyboard, because I can't tell dimension in wireframe, but I'll hit 5 to go back to shade mode. In X-ray mode, I can. Just note that X-ray does, wireframe on shaded. Oh, that means okay, that's just on full shaded mode. I was like, is there a keyboard shortcut for X-ray now? No, you still have to manually set up X-ray, and you actually have to manually put it in on each view. So just keep that in mind. But I'm going to just hit spacebar so this front view is taking up the majority of my screen here. And I can go ahead and go into vertex mode and start making sure it aligns with my reference. I'm going to put these guys up just a little bit higher because I do know his head is a little small in the front view because it would be kind of further going back in space than in the side. And we're going to grab our multi-cut and start making our typology. Now we have our center line, but I need typology for the mouth. So I'm going to hold down Control. Plane, are you okay? Plane, plane. There we go. I'm going to hold down Control. Or I can just draw it if it's being stubborn, which it is. There we go. And I now have some edge flow for my mouth. It may not seem like it, but I promise I do. I'm also going to insert an edge loop right by the nostril before the eye here. I'm going to insert an edge loop that determines like the top of the nose where that nose would extrude out. Not the bridge necessarily, but I will make another edge loop right before the eyebrow there. And I will make an edge loop by the edge of the eye here. This part will eventually go back in space. And I'm actually going to go into face mode and delete this half of the model here. So now I have some vertices. Let's start moving them around. We're going to put these right here. These are probably going to go back, so I'm actually going to align these pretty close. We'll round this out a little bit. Don't want to round it out too much. There we go. And we'll bring this in a little bit for the nose. Let's get that facial typology. I'm going to go ahead and select these faces around the mouth. And then I'm going to hit Control E as in extrude. You can also find extrude on your modeling toolkit, but that's Control E as extrude. So I'll shrink that down. We're going to do it where it's just like the inside of his lips there. We can always insert edge loops for his lips because we're going to use this to help us make a mouth pocket later. You can see though that I have this face, and see later on we're going to mirror this. I'll actually go ahead and do that just so you can see why this face here is a problem. So we're going to go to Mesh, Mirror. Yes, I want X axis. Yes, I want world. Yes, I want negative direction, which is always this left side here. So see what that face did? It created additional typology that just ruins my whole flow zone there. So I'm going to hit undo, and I'm going to hit backspace. And now I can move that edge over. If I hold down X on my keyboard while moving an edge, it will snap to the grid. Since we're modeling one half of the model and then mirroring it later, we will have to use that snap to grid function quite a bit. So let's go ahead and get the initial typology for the eye here. I probably need another edge loop to go down the center. I may go ahead and insert that there. Just so I'm positive I can make a nice curve to the eye. And I'm going to select those squares overlapping my eye socket there. And I'm going to extrude inwards. And I can go ahead and start shaping those vertices for the eye shape. I'm going to make it a little bit more oval than the art so it's a little bit easier to work with. And just with those little extrusions, I've actually made my basic flow zones. I need a flow zone that I need one more. I'm going to go ahead and just insert this for the example, which is kind of above the brow here where it starts to go back in the forehead. This will help make kind of it almost looks like a superhero mask or a raccoon mask around the brow. I got my radial edge loop around the eye. I got my like isolating edge loop around the nose and my radiating edge loop around the face. And I am going to just mirror this to talk about what I'm trying to do here. If I go to mirror, and I mirror it, and I then insert an edge loop, you can see that I can insert edge loops, but it's contained in that area. So it's not going to the rest of the body, which means that I can add more detail to the face, which does need a decent amount of geometry because it's going to be deformed. But I don't have to increase my overall poly count across the entire body because it's contained to that area. And that area, called a flow zone, is limited to the same muscle structure of the human face. So you have muscle structure around the mouth, muscle structure around the eyes, muscle structure around the nose, the brow, etc. And by the end, it's going to look something like this. We're going to look up human flow, Edgeflow for animation. There we go. You can see it has a little mask. It has the radios around the eye. Uh, let's see if there's a little bit better one. This is my favorite example and the one I use the most because it has really clean edges for the mouth, the nose, and the eye. And that's what we're going for here. Now, obviously right now this is just a flat plane, but a lot of the hard part we have already established. In the next phase, we're going to start making this more three-dimensional, including extruding eye sockets and mouth pockets. I'll see you in the next video.